Good morning. This tutorial will take you through the process of making a baby comforter. What you will need is quilt batting, 2 different pieces of material, something to tie the comforter with and a darning needle, and a pair of scissors. You'll also need some sort of measuring device and a sewing machine. For my comforter, I've chosen 100% cotton flannel for both the front and the back. Polyester cotton blend fabrics work just as well for this project, but I wanted the soft, smushy feel of baby flannel for my comforter. Before you go any further, be sure and pre-wash all of your materials. Once your materials are all washed, lay it out flat on a large surface. Be sure that the selvages are even. My comforter is going to be 60 inches by 42 inches, so I purchased 2 yards of each material for the project. You want to purchase an additional foot of material to begin with to allow for shrinkage. After it's washed and it's nice and flat, lay your measuring device on it and pin it across the edge where you're going to cut it to make it square. You should cut your material 2 inches bigger than your finished comforter will be. This will be in the seam allowances and in the loft of the comforter. The next step is to sew all the way around the outside of the comforter. Put your cut materials right sides together and pin along the edges all the way around the quilt on all 4 sides. On one long edge, leave yourself a space of about 12 inches. This will be for inserting the batting after you've sewn the edges. Once your comforter is sewn all the way around, trim the corners and turn it right side out. Then lay it on a flat surface on top of your batting to make sure that your batting will fit inside the comforter. If it won't, simply trim the edges all the way around even with the size of your sewn comforter. Next, roll your batting so that it will open or unfold from the center. You'll be putting this through the opening you left when you sewed all the way around the edges of the comforter. Through the opening you left in the perimeter, insert the rolled batting all the way to the other end of the comforter. The next step will be to unfold it inside the comforter and get it to lay flat. Once your batting is unrolled inside the comforter and laid nice and flat, once again go all the way around the edges, pinning it every so often to keep the batting in place nice and flat. You're going to go back to the sewing machine and sew 5/8 of an inch away from the edge all the way around to make that nice rolled look on the edge of the comforter. Also in this step, notice I've pinned the opening that I left to insert the batting. You can sew all the way around either before or after you whip stitch this closed. Now comes the fun part. We get to tie this comforter. But first we need to do some math. Measure the width and the length of the entire piece. You can tie this comforter at any interval you like, but it should never be further than 6 inches apart. My preference is tying it closer than every 5 inches. And I've developed a system to make measuring and tying a comforter an easy thing. I've attached a piece of masking tape starting at the seam on this side all the way to the seam at the other edge. Measuring in 1.5 inches from each seam on each side, I've marked with vertical lines every 5 inches on the hole numbers and with horizontal lines on 1/2 inches starting at 2.5 every 5 inches, 7.5, 12.5, etc. On each row I'll use a different set of marks to tie comforter. For example, the first row I'll use the vertical marks, then I'll move the tape 2.5 inches and use the horizontal marks, and move the tape another 2.5 inches and use the verticals again. This saves me from measuring the ties in every row. All I have to do is measure the specified row distance and move the tape. Let me do a bit and show you what it looks like. My comforter is now tied from one end to the other. Note the rows of yarn through the face of my comforter, and note that the penetrations through it are staggered because of the marks on my masking tape. All that's left to do now is to take scissors and cut between the penetrations and tie the ends in a knot. I hope you've enjoyed this video on how to make a comforter and get lots of use from it. Happy sewing, everyone!